Welcome to IG's investment channel. Today we're talking to London AIM and Toronto Venture Exchange listed Amaroq Minerals. It's a gold and strategic minerals company with projects in southern Greenland. It's just raised £30 million at a 2.78% discount. The chief executive, Eldur Olafsson, founded the company back in 2017 and remains a shareholder who took part in this latest raise. Eldur, it's a pleasure to be able to catch up with you. Thanks indeed for joining us. Before we get to the recent capital raise, let's find out more about the business and ask you, gold and strategic minerals. Explain more about what you're doing.
No, yeah, certainly, and thanks for having me. We actually raised in total 48 million sterling. We raised for Amaroq, the company, 30, but at the same time, we concluded a deal where we sold 49% of our strategic metals to a group called GCAM, which is backed and led by Louis Bacon and Tim Leslie and other individuals to fund all of our strategic mineral portfolio. So it was a little bit larger transaction than only 30, which we are very pleased about. But to your question, we are a company that has an asset that we are starting mining next year, gold asset, one of the highest grade gold assets around the world. This asset is still growing its resource, and we intend to be in full-scale production by 2024. From a strategy point of view, why is it important to have an asset in production in Greenland? Well, I think most of the market and who follow the market understand Greenland has the potential to be the biggest mineral basket in the world. It's undeveloped in terms of mineral exploration and exploitation, and it has huge potential. The question lies in how do you operate, how do you execute, and therefore having an operating mind to be able to unlock these 6 other assets that we have. Each of one could be company maker on its own, with a now fully funded portfolio for the next years to come and getting into cash flow is really important to us and has always remained our strategy.
I said you're a shareholder in the business. What's your interest in terms of how you're coming at this? Are you a geologist or are you a money man? What's your background?
Yeah, so I'm a geologist. I'm a purpose-driven man, but I also am quite competitive. So I like to use the capital markets and these ratios to give us ways to kind of measure ourselves. However, in Greenland has the potential to become this nation that can deliver strategic and gold and other minerals to the rest of the world in a safe and sustainable way. So for me, when I set this out, I come from Iceland. I come from a country that has had its ups and downs, but has built up infrastructure, industries, and a system which now is one of the, gives the best livelihood that you can get to any person around the world due to the energy resources and the businesses we have in place. And that is something Greenland has the potential to have as well. So from a purpose perspective, Iceland and Greenland are very, very friendly nations. We intend to build a Greenlandic legacy company, and with, frankly, Greenland, we all need Greenland to perform because we need those minerals for the electrification and such. But it needs to be done in a way where we can grow the confidence and the people and the whole system in Greenland together with the industry, and that's what that's why I wake up in the morning, so to say.
To what degree is this a play against China? I mean, China's heavily involved in the commodities, the minerals sector, and this is clearly something well away from China. It's owned by you as a national of Iceland. You're listed in Toronto and London. Clearly nothing to do with China. Do you see yourself as playing into this idea of supplying the world with minerals that aren't fed through China?
I mean, I think if we look at, if we just take one step higher, and we'll answer this question. One step higher is the fact that there are only, in my mind, 3 countries in the world that is left to be mined. Those are Greenland, Colombia, and maybe Afghanistan. And Colombia and Afghanistan for obvious reason, but Greenland is because it's a frontier that has been built up. And I think with the recent conflict around the world and what is happening, we can clearly see that the Western democracies, they need to have a source of minerals within our own country that we can actually rely on and make sure how they're delivered and are all of the standards that we feel are in correct shape. So us as a company, we don't take a political stand, but what we do is that we try to build the company up in as much harmony with the people and the market as possible. So we are grateful for our shareholder, which, for example, include myself and Scandinavian and UK and US and other investors, but more importantly, the Danish Sovereign Fund or the Vext Fund, the Greenland Sovereign Fund, as well as the largest pension fund of Greenland are collectively about approximately 10% shareholder in the company. So all of that matter, obviously, how you develop this, and I would be lying if we haven't seen the interest of the US in Greenland increased with their consulate setup and with all of the capital that is now being provided into Greenland, because obviously this is important to us. And so we can certainly deliver the minerals, deliver the exploration for the Western world, because the scale of these deposits are potentially enormous, right? These are all company makers in the sum, each of these assets. And that's why it makes it so exciting. That's why we're getting this support, is because we can actually deliver on assets for the short term for cash flow, but also for the longer term in terms of metal, which actually has an effect on how you deliver minerals to Western companies, for example.
Yeah, let me just pick up on another point that I know that is something you're eager to do, and that is to look for another listing. You're listed here in London, as I said, on the AIM market. You're on the Venture Exchange in Toronto, and I believe you've now applied for a listing on Iceland's First North market. I'm not too familiar with the First North market. What's it going to give you, and why go down this route?
No, it's a fair question. I guess if you live in London, the last thing you heard about Iceland is the collapse in 2008 when we had our banking system and so on. However, Iceland needs to clean up their act. So we have been working tightly of building the economy, but also to lower our debt ratios and so on. So Iceland today has one of the most envious positions of Western countries. We are a net exporter of energy. We don't use limited amount of any hydrocarbons whatsoever. We have one of the lowest debt to GDP of the Western countries, so we're not facing the same issues as many European countries, for example, are facing right now. And therefore, the wealth has been built up in Iceland, both through our institutional system, so for example, pension system, as well as the banking system itself. And if you look at how close Iceland is to Greenland, you can obviously see that not only from a political level, but from a banking, servicing, and execution level, it becomes very, very important that these countries work together. So effectively, what we're looking at there is one economical area. And we there, you're correctly stating, there are only 29 companies in the Icelandic stock exchange, and we are the only resource company in that stock exchange. So in terms of capital allocation for the institutional investors and family offices in Iceland, as well as the banking system to be able to support that, there's a huge opportunity for liquidity and value growth there in a nation that is still growing in terms of GDP compared to many other nations around the world.
Let's return to the fundraising, the balance sheet, and where you want to go, and how long the money's going to last you and so forth. You say you raised, 48 million, thank you for correcting me, with that extra amount on top of what you raised in London. What are you going to be doing with that? You're talking there about 2024 production. Clearly, there's a bit of capital expenditure to go before then. How long is this balance sheet, the strength of the balance sheet, going to last you? I think in the context of market cap, you've got 99.5 million pounds of market cap in the London listed stock. So that puts that sort of cash into some sort of perspective.
Yeah, so I mean, from that cash position, we're sitting on from 30th of June around 12 million in sterling already in cash. So you see, that's 60 million in total on the market cap that you described earlier. So to kind of lay out the route here, 2/3 of this capital that we raised of the 30 million, because we raised that on the Amaroq level and the 18 million on a subsidiary level in a joint venture. So 2/3 of that goes into developing the mine Naylor, essentially start mining there. And the intention next year is to take approximately 20,000 tons of ore out of the mine and ship it out for processing and start generating cash flow. The following year in 2024, we intend to build the processing plant on site, which we have fully designed, and we acquired about 60% of the equipment for that. And the Icelandic banks that I mentioned here earlier, they are going to be a key part, and other banks, to assist us with lending at that point in time. With regards to the rest of the capital, that fully funds 6 assets for the next 3 years to fully explore and drill them out. So if you look at us as a company, you have a combination of cash flow generating assets that gives an operating base, but then you have at least 6 assets that we are drilling to the stage where they become initial resource or a deposit, which obviously is very, very exciting from a kind of a value proposition, both like 3 to 4 on strategic and 3 on gold. So there will be a lot to do, and this is fully funded out for the next 3 to 4 years, and none of this is offset by any cash flow or anything like that. So we try to take a very conservative approach in a market that is obviously not very vibrant at the moment, to make sure we can deliver on something that is different, that the market is constantly listening on. We're basically delivering metal asset deposits to the market.
Just one other question I wanted to ask, and that is, the current environment is difficult to raise money. I mean, obviously, if you've got a good project, maybe the money's easier to raise. But what are you thinking about in terms of the current environment, the economic backdrop? One hopes it might be somewhat better and somewhat more clear in 2024 when you start bringing metals onto the market. But it is so difficult at the moment. Have you found any sort of headwinds in trying to make this business work in this early stage?
Yeah, I mean, I would be lying if I wouldn't say that. I mean, we put out 2 transformational news out in the market this year. One, we announced that we had delivered this ACAM deal, which is this green strategic minerals in June, and that should have impacted hugely on our share price, but it didn't. And the second report that we put out was a few weeks ago, when we increased the resources by 30% and the grade by 60%. And again, so there's definitely pressures in the market. However, what we have, if we look a little bit further back, what we have been developing and building up, and this is why Iceland comes into play as well, is that we've been building up a path with people who are longer term investors of large family offices and commodity funds, right? Who take a much longer view than, this winter or something like that. And secondly, we've been going into market, which are, most of these markets are net exporter of energy. They're not facing the same issue as many of the European countries. What I mean by that, they're not as affected by all of these very difficult things that are happening in the market. And when you look at our valuation, it's so good with the potential that we can create there. And I would say, and I would argue that, yes, we obviously correlate with indexes and stocks, but our assets, they correlate very much to most of what is happening in the stock market, being the tech market or anything like that. So we have gold that we are producing, and then we have all of these strategic minerals that we all know is going to be the key concern to actually find ways to get us less dependent on Russian gas, Russian oil, and all of these things. You have to go electric. You have to go for it. And if the verdict is out that we are going to be facing inflation for years to come, which I think people will say, you will see gold performance better, because the verdict has been gold. It hasn't taken off as much because people think the inflation is coming down next year. But I think in our hearts, we all understand that's not going to happen, right? So I think the positioning right now, I think, is that the market is in a shock moment and is now thinking, how will I move? Where should I move? And I think the market will move to hard assets. I think it will move to things like gold and metals and so on, especially because we need that to stay alive, to keep warm. I mean, you were literally speaking to people in England who are thinking about how to keep themselves warm this winter. So that's why I have so much belief in the story, because we need this for the entire economy.
Yeah, let's bring up a share price chart to track what's going on at the moment. I should say, I know that as of this summer, before the fundraise, you were holding a 4.5% stake in the company, and I know you also participated in that fundraise you've seen recently. But this is the London listed stock here. We are currently trading at 36 pence. What's been priced in your mind? Markets like to price in future expectations. From what you're saying, if the markets do, as you say, perhaps maybe appreciate hard materials, or will be appreciating hard materials maybe early next year or something, where should the share price be given future expectations?
I mean, I can only tell you where I want to be in the future, right? And so if I just start with the Naylor mine, Naylor mine is sitting at 320,000 ounces. We think we can move those ounces to more than 1 million in the next 2 years, right? Our grade is amongst the highest in the world. So if you compare other mines in other parts of the world with that grade, you can only find Fosterville in Australia, which has been the most profitable mine for the past 15 years, gold mine in the world, right? And with the view of starting production targets of what we have in our mind in the next 2 years and the grade and the increase in value, we think we can multiply the value with the Naylor alone, right? Then you look at the exploration assets, which all can be company makers in their own. Like, you don't have many countries around the world where you still have mineralization on surface where you can actually quantify them by drilling them out, because most of this has been mined out, or the grade has been dropping, or the mine life is shortening. So that's why we feel extremely confident with the valuation going forward, even though the metal prices wouldn't necessarily go up or anything like that, just by having more of the same. You get my point. How do we deliver the valuation of that? Well, one of the steps we've taken is to go into the Icelandic market, go into where we think liquidity is more, where we can get more support, and if there and build up that asset base and get more attraction. And being the only resource company in the Icelandic market, I think will help tremendously, because people will, I think, allocate towards these assets as I described earlier. So I think in terms of valuation, if you just look at the valuation of our assets right now, I mean, it's 30 million sterling. I mean, it's an absolute steal in a way, which obviously part of the reason why most of the directors and others, we participate in this race, because we have a huge belief in the value we can create.
I just want to wrap things up if I can and go for one last question and talk a little bit more about what you're doing from here, between here and now, and the 2024 production target that you've got. What milestones you've got along the way to watch out for?
Yeah, so we're delivering now in the next weeks and months results from drilling another 10,000 meters of drilling in Naylor, 1,500 meters in Vagar, which is this big gold asset, and we drilled 2 zones in Sava, which is our copper ISUG play. So that's just coming out in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So that's going to be very impactful news, we think. Then we are turning around and we're starting mining next year, and we'll be mining towards all the rest of the year, and then we'll be shipping that ore out for processing and cash flow as early as next year. And we're targeting drilling somewhere between 5 to 6 assets next year. So the current asset we drilled this year and additional 3 others. Go into 2024, we are then building the processing plant on site to lower our all sustaining cost and do it closer to the mine. And therefore we should be in free cash flow generation to support further development of the mine, but also to support development of other mines in the region. So this is going to be a growth period for us, which we are now fully funded going into, and we then have support from the market and the institutions in Iceland for both lending and for equity contribution if needed.
Okay, well, we look forward to hearing more about things as things roll on, but it's a pleasure to be able to catch up with you. Thanks indeed for your time. That was Eldur Olafsson. He's the Chief Executive of Amaroq Minerals.